What's going on, guys? Kultimush back at it with a $400 gaming PC build. Now, yes, it's a $400 PC build, so don't expect a complete world beater out of this. But this is a fine build if you're looking to do some decent 1080p gaming at around medium settings on a lot of the higher-end games. And obviously, if you're playing older games and games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive, League of Legends, and Dota, you'll be perfectly fine. So with that being said, let's get right into this build with the CPU. I went with the AMD Athlon X4 860K 3.7 GHz quad-core processor. Now, this CPU's price has actually been dropping recently. Right now, it's all the way down to $70. And that's a great price for a quad-core CPU, and you definitely want to get a quad-core CPU in a build these days, especially because a lot of games these days really take advantage of having a quad-core CPU. And the X4 860K being this cheap, being only $70, and still getting a quad-core CPU, still getting a CPU that's 3.7 GHz, that's pretty nice. Now, it being a quad-core CPU doesn't make it as nice as something like an i5. Compare the price of an i5 and an 860K, and you'll see why that's the reason. But still, as far as a budget-end CPU goes, the 860K is freaking awesome. It's clocked at 3.7 GHz, which is great, and at a very cheap price of $70. Check it out. This is the perfect kind of CPU in a build like this. You get to save a little bit of money, put that towards the graphics card, which at the end of the day is the most important part of a gaming build. For the motherboard, I went with the Gigabyte GA-F2 A88XM-D3H Micro ATX FM2 Plus motherboard. Now, it's a Micro ATX board, but that really doesn't matter. It's not like you're going for a Crossfire configuration, and this motherboard still has all the features you want. It's got 4 RAM slots up to DDR3 2133, up to 64 gigabytes of max memory. It's got RAID support, and it's got 8 SATA 6 gigabit per second ports, which is pretty nice. This motherboard is only $62, and it's from Gigabyte, who have a really good warranty policy and a really good track record with their motherboards. And this is the kind of motherboard you want in a budget and build like this. It's going to do everything you want and pretty much nothing else. You don't want to overspend in a motherboard on a build like this. For memory, I went with Crucial Ballistic Sport 8 gigabytes, 2 4GB sticks running at DDR3 1600 MHz for $39. Pretty great price for 8 gigabytes of RAM. Not much more to say about this. Even in a budget and build like this, I would not go for 4 gigabytes of RAM. 8 gigabytes of RAM is just so cheap. It's $39. It's really not that expensive. Just pick up 8 gigabytes now, and a lot of games will benefit from it, especially games like Witcher 3, even Battlefield 4, Dying Light. All the newer games are going to benefit from having 8 gigabytes over 4 gigabytes. And at this kind of price, there's really no reason to not get 8 gigabytes of RAM. So for $39, I chose the Crucial Ballistic Sport 8 gigabytes. For the hard drive, I went with the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB for around $50. It's the Caviar Blue 1TB. I've recommended this hard drive so many times, but just so everybody knows, I've said this in my previous builds, if you guys want more than a terabyte, look out for Seagate's 2 and 3 terabyte drives. I think they even have a 4 terabyte drive out. Those hard drives go on sale all the time. I've seen the 2 terabyte drive as low as $60. So if you do want more than a terabyte, shop around. You probably can find those Seagate drives pretty cheap. But the Caviar Blue, being a mechanical drive, still has pretty decent speeds. Obviously not to that of an SSD, but it's still pretty good, and obviously you're getting much more storage than you would get out of an SSD for this kind of price. For the video card, I went with the EVGA GeForce GTX 750 Ti 2GB model. Now, this graphics card is around $110 to $120, and the GTX 750 Ti can actually play a lot of the newer games at medium to high setting. A game like The Witcher 3, you can actually play that game at around high settings and still go 30 FPS. And in my opinion, this is one of the best video cards on the market right now for this kind of price. And if you're playing games like Skyrim, the older Call of Duty games, League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, all those kinds of games, you're going to be perfectly fine with the GTX 750 Ti. Don't expect to max out games like Metro and The Witcher. Those are higher end games, but you can still play them at medium to high settings and still get very playable frame rates. So the GTX 750 Ti on higher end games is going to give you a pretty similar experience to what you would expect on a console. But it's still a very good video card that goes really well with the Athlon 860K. And right now, for this kind of price, for $110 to $120, you really can't go wrong with the 750 Ti. It's one of the best GPUs on the market right now, price to performance. For the power supply, we went with the EVGA 500 watt 80 plus certified ATX power supply. Just a 500 watt power supply. I wanted to get something decent quality. I don't want to overspend and get like a 700 watt power supply in this build, of course. 500 watts is going to power this build no problem. You can't even go for an SLI configuration in this build, so getting even like a 600 watt power supply is kind of useless. This 500 watt power supply is only $38. It's from EVGA. It's 80 plus certified, so all around this was a winner in the build. Finally, for the case, I went with the NZXT Source 210 Black ATX mid-tower case. This case is $30. In a $400 build, you're just looking for a cheap case, and the NZXT Source 210, even with it being only $30, it's still freaking fantastic for the price. Yes, it's not going to blow anyone away, but just look at that price. For a fully functional mid-tower case, you really can't go wrong with the NZXT Source 210. Honestly, it's one of the best cases on the market just due to its price. Also, the case comes in black or white. I personally prefer the black version, but if you want the white version, go ahead and pick that up. They're roughly the same price. So thanks for watching this video, guys. As always, if you have requests for future videos, leave them in the comment section down below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you disliked, obviously dislike. And as always, guys, have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.